Recording
Seltzer.
and live.
How do we know?
Good evening, everyone. We'll officially start the meeting in just a moment. I'll pause and for just several seconds to allow attendees and anyone else to join the call. So just bear with us for a moment or two, and we'll officially call the meeting to order shortly. All right. So we are there for participants and attendees. Okay, I see them. Yeah, we are hoping for one more of our commissioners to join. So we'll see, give them another minute or so and see if we can get them on board. Well, I'm really talking about nothing important right now. I was just reflecting back when we used to meet in person, and we would often have to be waiting for late arrivals to the meeting down at City Hall and so forth. So the Zoom meetings generally start on time. And let's see what it's 1, 2, 3. Well, we do have a quorum.
Yeah.
So why don't I do this? Why don't I start with some of the opening remarks? We'll officially call the meeting to order and get started. And hopefully by the time we get to our first serious agenda item, which is a demo delay application, Mark will be here. So I'll officially call the meeting to order. This is the meeting of the Newburyport Historical Commission for the 10th of November, 2022. And please note and be aware that this proceeding, like all city virtual meetings, is being recorded. We'll start with our roll call of commissioners. We have, which also lets us test their audio. Andrew Bernhardt.
I'm here.
Yep. Biff Baus.
I'm here as well.
Okay. Biff. Now Mark Sandrone has not joined us yet, so we'll pass over Mark for now. Joe Morgan.
I'm here.
Okay, and the chair, Glenn Richards, is present and speaking. Commissioner Christopher Fay is absent, and unless he joins pretty quickly, Mark Sandrone will be absent. But we do have a quorum of at least 4 people. That's the minimum for a quorum to pass anything. So briefly, commissioners' applicants will normally be the only ones with audio enabled, but one member of the public at a time will be unmuted during public hearing periods. I'll go over the procedure for that when we, if and when the time arrives. I think it is, we may have a public hearing period. We'll see how that goes. All right, if we do, I'll explain how that works. Okay, so we'll move to our first agenda item. It's a demolition delay application, 182 to 184 Merrimack Street. Yeah, pardon the zoom in effect there. Did you somehow fix it, Caitlin? Anyway, this is now we have the applicant is Anthony Bonacorso and Chris Crump. I think, is Mr. Crump going to be speaking?
Yes.
Okay, and I see we have your audio. We can hear you, Chris. May I be so informal as to, do you prefer Chris or Mr. Crump, or do you have any preference?
Chris is fine.
Okay.
Trying to change my video on. I just can't seem to find it, but
yeah, that's fine. Normally the attendees don't have the video anyway.
okay.
Now, are you familiar with the demolition delay procedure, Chris?
Fairly, yes.
Okay, so we first may have to make a decision as to historical significance and whether or not it's considered for preservation, and then we move to an actual review of what is planned, what you plan to do. It's kind of called a demolition plan review. It's a combination of reviewing what you're going to demolish, but also what you're going to put in its place. So that comes second, and then we vote on whether it's preferably preserved, and if it is, that imposes a 1-year demolition delay. However, what we've been doing lately is reviewing, since we reviewed the plans, if the plans are acceptable, we don't feel there's any adverse historical damage being done to the structure, in this case beyond what's already been done, we can approve the plans as presented tonight and lift the demo delay so you can proceed. All right, so that's in brief what we're going to be doing. So this is a well, I'll a couple brief remarks. This is a building that goes back to the early 19th century, probably right around the turn of the century, federal period structure. Right, and you can see Caitlin has the Form B up. Looked a little bit better in those days. Obviously, the front entry is clearly not original, even in this back in 1980 when this was done. But looked a little bit better than it does today. At any rate, is there anything, Chris, you'd like to say specifically pertaining to whether or not the building is historically significant, I should say?
Other than the fact that it has been, it was built back in circa 1800. You know, there have been many modifications and adjustments and cosmetic changes to the building that really have detracted from the actual original historic integrity of the building. So at this point, so many modifications and materials that are being used on that are present on the building do not really depict and accurately show what the true character and value of this building was. So, you know, I feel that, you know, although it was built in the historic times, or, you know, back in the 1800s, it's lost a lot of its historic integrity where it is today.
Yeah, and I agree with those comments myself. And so when a house is this age, it's obviously not falling down. It's been modified, has a Form B, it's contributing to the historic district and so on. It's pretty rare for us to consider it not historically significant. So I want to hear a motion. There are a couple options here. If you want to, if there's a commissioner, if a commissioner feels that we can go directly to make a motion that it's historically significant and considered for preservation, that would be in order. If you'd prefer to separate that and say it's historically significant but not considered for preservation, that could be a motion as well. But just remember that if that should be approved, then that ends. There's no further consideration of plans or anything else. Does anyone have a comment or a motion to make at this point among my peers here? Yeah, Joe.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Biff.
I was just gonna say, if we could pull up a current picture, I think that would help. I've looked at it, you know, just within a few days ago, but I think just for our discussion would help just a little.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, Joe, did you want to comment or?
Well, I would just say, based on its age being 1800, circa 1800, I would propose, I would move that the structure is historical and certainly to be considered for preservation. So
Okay.
I would include both of those, that it is historical and that it should be considered for preservation. So that's my motion.
Okay. Does anyone second that?
I will second that.
Okay. So the motion is that it is historically significant and considered for preservation. So I'll take the roll call like we do for all these virtual meetings. Andrew, you vote on that? Did we lose Andrew?
I forgot to unmute. Yes.
Okay, that's a yes. Biff?
Yes.
Thank you. Ramon Marks and Joan is not with us, so we'll skip him. Joe Morgan?
Yes.
Okay. The chair agrees. So we do have 4 affirmative votes, which will pass that motion. So we don't have to, we can, so we, let's see, where are we here? Just give me a second to get myself organized here. One more moment. Okay, so it is historically significant and considered for preservation. So what happens now is a discussion around, or a review, I should say, of the demolition plans, which if there's anyone in the public wants to comment, we'll allow that if that should come. So Chris, this is your chance to tell us what you plan to demolish and build. and so on. Thank you. So you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So Caitlin, if I can scroll back up to probably the site plan. Just want to go over and to kind of give you guys an illustration of what's going on the site itself. And you know, the building is 6 apartments, 3 on each side, 2 on each floor, mirror images for the most part of each other. And it has been that way for a number of years. My client, Anthony Bonacorso, who is also present on this call, purchased the property less than a year ago. And then once he did purchase it, did some evaluations and inspections into the building and found that there were, as can be expected in old homes like this, significant structural issues and faults with the building. And if either of you, any of the members on the commission have stopped by the building recently, you obviously have seen that they've been doing some emergency structural support and adjustments to the building with full cooperation and understanding and direction from the building inspector. My client has been very open and outright and honest with the building inspector to try and resolve all the structural issues that are intact inside. And also, I've worked on many different historic buildings. I actually specialize a lot in doing designs for old historic buildings and trying to preserve as much of the building as possible and keeping the structural and the archaic historic relevance and characteristics of a building intact as much as possible, even when you transition into modern lifestyle living. And it's something I take a lot of pride in. But very rarely do you come across a client who goes above and beyond what is really needed to make sure that the building itself is done correctly, and even a little bit one step further, putting extra money in just to make sure that it's safe and done right. And so I've been very impressed and amazed at how much effort and time and money my client has sunk into this project already, just to repair and restructure and keep the integrity of this building intact as much as possible. So just want to mention that in the beginning. So, but in any case, the building itself, we are still planning to keep it 6 apartments. And what we're proposing to do is it's a pre-existing non-conforming structure. And, you know, it's tight to the side setbacks as well as the front, but obviously that's common in most buildings around the area. But what we're looking to do is basically cosmetic adjustments to the exterior of the building, and some window replacement. And then probably the biggest factor of the whole equation is we're looking to put a dormer on the backside of the roof. Mm-hmm. So if we can go to the existing elevations real quick. Sorry, Caitlin. Thank you.
Yeah, a quick comment. It was the dormer in the back, just for the commissioners to, if you not aware, that's what triggered the roof line change, which triggered the demo delay hearing. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Correct. Yes, thank you. So this is the existing, an abbreviated quick version of the front elevation, just to give you an idea of what's there now. And then the sides. So the main box of the building is all historic and original building and footprint. And then if you go to the next slide, there was a 3-tiered deck, which serves as the second means of egress for all the apartments, that was built on the back. This was all built with pressure treated lumber. So obviously this is not historic. It does have a roof line above it as well, a covered roof above it. Now I can show you that in the pictures afterwards. In the next slide, you can see that there's a lot of tiers of decks on the back side and the egress stair that comes down to grade. And the next slide, and that's just the other side of the elevation. Okay, so going to the pictures, you can see, well, you can't really tell from the pictures, but it is vinyl siding on the structure right now. The windows are old, dilapidated, and failing. They all need to be replaced. All the windows that we are proposing to put back into the building will be on the front of the building, and on the sides of the building will be the same size as the windows, or as close to, with the standard sizes of windows we have today, as close to the windows that are there now. We would like to propose putting a covered entry over the front door to give it a little bit more curb appeal and cover on the front door. The next slide is just some pictures, just one from the other view. And I kind of took these pictures from a distance so you can kind of get a feel for the surrounding buildings around it. And you can see that this structure, although it's large, does not overpower any of the surrounding buildings as much. The roof lines are pretty much the same, so it's pretty much intact there. On the next slide, this is the one that the next two ones are the ones that I wanted to point out the most. Is the deck on the back is quite a big thing on the back, noticeable on the back of the building, with all the pressure treated wood and so forth.
Was monstrosity the word you were looking for?
I wasn't going to try and push that one, but it could be seen that way. So, you can obviously tell this is something that was done much later in the process. And so in the last picture we have there, you can see that they have a covered gable over the top of all the decks, but it's mostly over just the stair that goes down to give it covered. So that, to help, it won't completely take away from the snow and rain, but it would definitely help. So what we're proposing, the next slide, please. Thank you. So we'd like to, my client is definitely interested in putting some type of accent to the building as much as possible, trying to keep it the integrity intact at the same time. We were looking to put an eyebrow roof entry on the front of the house, on the front of the building, with brackets on the side, not a full close, or not something that comes out with columns all the way down. We do have the depth to be able to have that there, and it is exempt, but because of roof line change, obviously, everything's on the table right now for your purview. And then we replace all the windows. We are hoping underneath the vinyl siding is cedar siding. We are hoping to replace it or put it back with cedar siding. But to be honest with you, there is a current major spike in cedar prices right now. So if we can, and there are not many pieces of cedar that need to be replaced or put back, we would like to look at that option. But if worst case scenario, if for some reason it just becomes that we find the majority of the siding is not replaceable, or it takes too much siding to put in there, we would like to have the alternate of being able to put hardy plank siding on there, so that this can be cost efficient and not be something that's really going to sink us for the cost of construction and repair. The corner boards and the eaves would all be white AZAC. And lastly, up top, we would like to introduce a eyebrow dormer to bring some natural light. So basically what my client is intending to do is, right now, currently, the attic space and the basement space are unfinished spaces, and what he's looking to try and do is expand and finish those spaces and incorporate them into the apartments, still keeping 6 apartments, but just expanding the top floor and the bottom floor to make the rooms, the apartments, a little bit bigger. And by incorporating this dormer on the front of the house, it would give us more natural light that pours into the unit, the 2 units on the top floor, to occupy the attic space up above. And that's also the reason why we're looking to put the dormer on the back side as well. So that's, for the most part, we're going to be using, we intend to use Pella design lifestyle series windows, so which is aluminum clad, black windows, black frame windows, and AZEK trim all around them. My client also should note that my client is part of Bonacorso Construction, but at the same time, he lives on Plum Island. He is a resident of Newburyport, and this is I believe one of his first properties in Newburyport, and this is something that he intends to keep and rent for many years to come. And he is a resident of Newburyport, so it's not like he's a developer coming in trying to fix this up and then sell it. He does have full intention of keeping this building and maintaining it, and he's constantly on top of all issues that have to go on the building. So, but in any case, we will be basically taking all the materials, all the existing materials, and replacing them in kind. Asphalt shingle roofs, black asphalt shingle roofs, architectural style, and hopefully putting some nice greenery on the outside of the building to liven it up and bring it back to life so it doesn't look so stale and isolated right now. And that's about it. Oh, and then obviously we'll put more heavier lentils over the windows to give it a little bit more of an architectural accent on there, similar to what they were a while back. And the next slide. And then the same thing here. Now, I know there's a 25% rule. We are simply, the only thing that's changing in the walls that might change in regards to the 25% rule is there are the two small windows that you see there on the side of the building. Those are new windows. The rest of them are existing windows. When we did some exploratory demo on the inside of the building, we found that actually those windows, those small windows in there, were there in the beginning. They were framed into the walls a long time ago from the beginning. And so we're looking to put those windows back in. And they're kitchen windows, or they were kitchen windows. So we're looking to put them back similar to where they are. And that's probably, and then there are some windows on the back side where we're going to make them a little bit lower. The sills a little bit lower, but other than that, that's the extent of any changing in wall, 25% rule in regards to changing anything on the exterior walls. We're not trying to change this into a whole different project. It's simple modifications and some window placements, and then of course the dormer on the top, which is why we're here tonight. And then the next slide. This is the.
I'm sorry, real quick question.
Sure.
What are those? What's going on? And this picture has it as well. On the roof, those gray areas, the rectangle with the
So
triangle.
those are skylights that we have to that we're putting in to be able to bring more natural light into the spaces up in that area. We didn't put any on the front. We're not trying to. We don't want to detract from the actual street side view of the property. So there are some on the sides and the back to be able to bring that natural light in for some of these apartments. On the back side of the building, we have kind of a mixture of railings and glass panel railings. This is simply, the intent here is to have glass panel railings only in front of where the units are, and then on the sides and on the where the stairs are, we would have railings, spoke railings, balustrades, so that it's a little bit more transparent and more in context with the style of a typical deck that you would see out there. The railings would be black. All the existing pressure treated decking would be wrapped in AZEK, so it'd all be white. So you're not looking at one huge pressure treated mess back there. We're hoping that by utilizing a lot of wrapping all the pressure treated wood in AZEK and putting nice railings and clean new lines of that, it will clean it up quite a bit and be more appealing from the back of the building, even though it's not viewed from the street. It's not a view from the street where most of the traffic comes by and sees the house or the building. And then the last one is the other side of the building, which are pretty much doing the same thing from the other opposite side. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you go back? I forgot about talking about the dormer. So the dormer up on top is just the width, will be the width of the ridge that the hip ridge, which is 10 feet. Both sides of the dormer are far within the 3-foot requirement from historic. And we're going to be taking off the gable roof that's over the porch right now and putting a flat roof so that tenants can utilize this. And we just made the dormer wide enough just to get a door for each unit to go out onto this roof. We didn't want to make it any bigger than we had to, but we made it just wide enough so that we can get one door for each unit to go out onto the flat roof and enjoy and maximize the $1 million views out to the river behind and the park behind it. So, and that's the reason why we're here, is because we are taking the gable off of the non-historic rear deck and stairs and so forth, turning that into a flat roof. And in order to get out there, we would like to create this dormer with access to it. And for the most part, that's where we are with that. I think that is the bottom of my slides. So we're happy to answer any questions and take any comments or questions in consideration for everything.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Well, when we first start with, does anyone on the commission have a question about anything Chris has said that they want clarified? Not seeing or hearing anything.
Actually, I
as
just
far,
have a.
oh, okay, there we
I'm
go. We have
curious.
Joe, I see your hand there.
Andrew, did you have something? Muted. You're muted. Andrew, you're muted. Did you want to speak?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm getting confused. What are the neighbors on the back of the house? Are there pictures of the properties in the rear of the house?
No, there's no property between the house and the park behind it.
Okay.
There is a neighbor, I believe it's the one in this photo, I believe it's the one to the right, submitted a letter into the portal, a letter of support and for this project. He's been very impressed with what my client has done to the building already and continues to do to help support the integrity and structure of the building, to try and preserve it as best as possible. But there is nobody behind this building between this and the park.
Okay.
Joe?
Yeah, and I just wanted to follow up with the structural issues. Are those resolved, or are how serious are they? Are they foundation issues? Are they framing, interior framing? What's going on there?
So it's a combination of all of the above. The existing foundation was starting to cave and buckle a bit. Fieldstone foundations, as you know, can easily come apart and depointed and can crumble in areas. So what my client has done is he put in a new foundation wall on the inside of the basement and pinned it up against the existing fieldstone foundation to make sure that those the foundation doesn't crumble anymore or start falling. There were a significant amount of existing timber structures and beams that were deteriorated due to termites or rot, and some of the beams were already turning. Instead of being level and straight, they were turning and turning in, and some of the walls were starting to sink and the floors were starting to sink because of it as well. So where he could, he tried to jack up the existing beams and keep them in place, because he is a big proponent for trying to keep as much of the original building intact as possible. He really enjoys that type of architecture, but in some cases they had to be replaced with LVLs, and he's jacked it all up in certain areas so that he can open up a wall just enough, like for example, the the deck on the first floor there underneath in the basement. That whole sill and beam posts that had to go across in between the basement and the first floor on the outside was completely shot. So he had to jack that all up and temporarily to be able to put a new beam in there that goes almost side to side on the whole structure. So it's basically a lot of the beams and so forth, as you can imagine, over time have been deteriorated due to dry rot or termites or ants. And so he's been replacing them as he goes through. Since he bought the building, the tenants have been one by one moving out. And he's been trying to one by one do some exploratory demo all over the place to see what he's up against and replacing things that are deteriorated and trying to do the best they can to try and keep as much of it intact as possible.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. And one further question. Are you working with a structural engineer?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So my client owns a construction company. Most of the work is down in the Wakefield area. And he has a structural engineer that he uses. He uses him all the time, and he uses him for all his projects. And he has been up here on a number of accounts to keep a watchful eye under the structural aspect of the building and making sure that the right procedures and size of structure is adequately resolved and in the right place.
Okay, very good. That's all the questions I have. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Joe. Just a quick aside, I had a similar situation in my own house where I had to have a poured concrete foundation abutting a fieldstone foundation to stabilize it because of an addition. Anyway, and also a little aside, I looked at an apartment in this structure when I first moved to town in 1980.
Oh, wow.
Okay, I'm in the attendees list. I don't see anyone other than you guys from this structure and the people that are going to be talking to us later on about Forester Street. So I think we can skip the public comment period since there's no one. Well, actually, yeah, if there was even a telephone person, they would show up there. So not seeing any members of the public attending, for which I'm highly offended, we can skip the public comment period. And so what I would do now is kind of go around the board and see what your comments are. What we have to do now is, well, let's see. We've heard the demo plan. Let me think for a second. It's either, where is that darn flow chart? Caitlin, what's the, oh, thanks. All right, so we had the demolition plan review, so it's okay. So it's either not preferably preserved, and then in that case he can proceed, or it's preferably preserved, and then we can vote on either the existing plan or suggest changes and so on. So, but before we have any motion, why don't we just go around and see what folks are thinking, and I'll make a note of your comments here. So, just so everyone gets a chance, and if, just at random order, Biff, any comments overall on the demo plan and that would pertain to the vote or the vote on the motion to be historically significant and considered, historically significant and preferably preserved would be the next thing we would be voting on.
Sure. I think the proposed plans, especially for the back dormer, are definitely better than the current situation. I don't think you can understate that. So I'm happy with the plans on the back, and I think the only thing that's throwing me off is maybe the dormer on the front. I don't know if it's the curve of the eyebrow that I like that. It's it kind of complements the bracketed front entry, but I'm just wondering how appropriate for like a federal style that would be.
Right.
But I think that's overall. I am really pleased with the look of it and what they're trying to do. I know I'm not sure that we have any say in it, but if the dental molding could come back, I would approve that.
Yeah, I know. When I saw the Form B photo, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, why did they ever
Exactly,
remove
yeah.
that? It's beautiful. Hey, Caitlin, while we're on the subject of this front dormer, there might be more questions on that. Is there a current street view that shows the front? Yeah, I guess that's close enough. I just wanted to get an idea of how visible that would be, because when we're looking at an elevation, an architectural drawing of an elevation, you're looking straight on. It's as if you were about 25 feet tall,
Right.
but people aren't. So yeah, so it looks like, at least from across that side of the street, you probably wouldn't see it at all. Across the street, you probably would. So just wanted to see what the visibility would be like.
So,
Yeah.
Chairperson, in relation to that's a very good comment and a view to look at it. And I just want to mention, majority of the traffic that goes by this property is cars, obviously, and people walking on the sidewalks. And from those viewpoints, you really can't see anything on the roof. If you are standing over there eating lunch outside at Park Lunch, or coming down the streets from the opposite side of this building, you will have views of the dormer, but that's probably the only viewpoints that you will really be able to see the dormer at that point.
Okay. All right. What I'll do, all right. How about Joe or Andrew? Can either of you care to comment?
I think it's overall, it's a great improvement.
Okay. So no other. So basically, any thoughts on? So you're not so particularly concerned about the front dormer either. Sounds like.
I'm
Okay.
not.
Okay. That's fine. And anything else, or shall I move to Joe? Okay. How about you, Joe? Any thoughts, comments, opinions?
Yeah, I agree. I don't have any problems with the back of the building. I think it's going to be an enormous improvement. It seems unsafe right now, so I think and certainly unattractive. So I think the work that's being proposed to solidify it structurally, to redo the railings, and to clad all of the pressure treated members, I think that's really an excellent proposal. I think it's really going to improve overall that rear elevation. But of course, the historical part of the building, as far as what we're concerned with, is really facing Merrimack. And
Right.
And people will probably remember this, that 2 weeks ago, I declared myself to be actually illiterate in terms of historical detail. And okay, so that I know people are probably going to remember that, and I've probably lost all credibility here, but I am going to make a comment that completely contradicts what I said last time. I'm going to actually venture into the realm of historical authenticity here, and I'm going to say that the eyebrow features are really end of 19th century, and this federal style building, since it is circa 1800, it's a fairly old structure. We probably should respect it. We should probably give it the respect it deserves. And I have no problem with adding an entry canopy, and I don't have a problem with the dormer either. I mean, but I think that they should adhere to something that comes from that period. And so I was wondering if that could, what the options are for that, if the architect, the designer has considered that, if there are something else, there's a plan B for that. The other comment I'd like to make is I do think that I think it's great that we're peeling off all of the old vinyl siding. That's just horrible. But I think it's really very important that we do restore the cedar siding. I'm okay with the AZEC trim elements, but I believe we really need to make an effort on the cedar lap siding. And not go with hardy pine. I mean, I understand the economics of that, but I'm afraid that if we normally do really advocate for replacing the cedar material where it's required. If you can, hopefully you'll discover, hopefully the builder will discover that much of it is still intact and can be preserved. That would be the best of all possible worlds. But I would say preserve and replace to replicate the existing. That's what I would really want to strive for.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
I have similar thoughts. Okay, anything else, Joe?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, for my own, here are some of my thoughts on this. First, I think we're all four now in agreement on the rear. Chris, I think it's pretty clear that that would be an improvement. Although that dormer does come, the facade where the doors are does come down into the same plane as the rear of the house. Given the location, given all the other factors, and especially the width, I don't think any of us, I didn't hear anyone really having a problem with it. I personally prefer dormers don't start right at the ridge like this one is, but in this case, again, because of the low visibility, I don't see it as a major issue. My issues are around a couple of other things, and I'm glad Joe mentioned the stylistic aspect of the curved nature, the design of the what you refer to as the eyebrow over the front entry and the dormer. And I would throw in that the corner boards to have sort of that recessed panel look, that is a little bit, that's not, I wouldn't say that's, wouldn't go so far as to say late 19th century, but it is, well, could be federal periods, typically a little later as you're starting to get into Greek revival kind of designs. And I wonder, since the Form B, one of the things I wrestle with is you're not trying to recreate your notion of what was there or may have been there. You really want to, unless you've got documentation that says, yes, we know the corner boards were like XYZ. In this case, we rely on the Form B photograph, knowing perfectly well that those may not be original windows, there may be other changes, but we know that at least, that's kind of the reference we have to go by unless we have an earlier one. So I would argue that you're probably, better off with just straight plain corner boards as per the Form B photograph. And for the windows, I am not sure why you want to go with 6/1 rather than 6/6, which is also shown in the Form B, and I think that's what they have today. I would think, especially on the front facade, the Merrimack Street facade, I think 6/6 would be much more in keeping with the overall style of the house. And finally, I think that you could do on that little covered entry, you could do something. In fact, we just had a discussion about this last week where someone needed to do a covered entry for a federal period structure. And we're looking at something that is has a triangle, but not, instead of a curved, just a triangular shape, if you will, like a little like a little gable, put it that way. So but not an open gable, but a gable with a a gable like this, and the bottom part, whatever
Pediment.
that's called. What was that?
Pediment.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and because of the, anyway, and so for the door, that would certainly look, what I'm hesitating about is, are we trying to make it look like it was always there? Because the secretary standards encourage or discourage you from trying to put something on that's new that you're trying to disguise to make it look like it was always there. It's not. You should be able to tell what's new from what's original. In this case, so much of what was original is already gone, so that's unfortunate. I agree with my colleague Joe Morgan, that it would be great if, in the Form B, it looks like it was before the vinyl siding, I think, may not have been, but hope maybe, well, you'll get lucky and most of the cedar siding on below, or sometimes if it's really old, it could even be pine siding, is okay. We'll just have to see. In the exploratory surgery, I think to know if you've done any peeking under the vinyl yet. But before you answer that, just one more comment on the dormer. Ideally, the only dormers that you typically see on a building this period would be little doghouse dormers. They would probably maybe put a building this size, you might have 2 or even just 1. And so I'd like to know if you've considered either skylights, which obviously are not period appropriate, but they are they don't disrupt the roof line quite so much, and they also are obviously a contemporary addition, and they read as such. And I think that in the past we've encouraged consideration of skylights on roofs versus dormers, unless we really like the design, unless the dormer is really an appropriate design. So I'd like to know if you've considered either of those possibilities for that front facade. So I'll ask you, Kristen, to comment on the window situation and the dormers in the relative to the comments I just made.
Sure. Thank you. And thank you to all the board members for all your comments and thoughts. I definitely take all those into, I appreciate all of them and take them into deep consideration. So in regards to your comments, Chairperson, on the dormer itself, we have considered skylights, but I think that my client agrees on the front of the house, on the front of the building, that would be our last resort. Where we don't want to have more of a contemporary skylight on the front of the building. On the sides and the back, we didn't think it was that significant, but on the front, we were trying to deter from putting that option in. So we were trying to, the goal of this
for aesthetic purposes, Chris.
Yes.
Okay.
It's just I'm a big proponent for historic homes and preserving them as best as possible, and trying to keep the integrity and look of them as well as possible. And to look at a historic home on at least the part that's facing the street to see a skylight, it's very hard for me to do that.
Okay,
So,
yeah, I can understand that.
So we're trying to avoid that, but we need to get we do need to get some natural light into the third story. Into the attic space up there for the spaces that we're trying to incorporate. And we were trying to create enough, as much natural light as we can up there. The small little dormers, what I call doghouse dormers, that that were possible there, really would be difficult to get enough. They wouldn't propose enough light, or as much light as what, and that's what kind of drove this, is to try and get as much light and headroom on the front of the building as possible for those spaces up there. My client thought of the eyebrow dormer, the eyebrow on the front entryway would be a nice accent piece that really kind of highlights, or not highlights, but accentuates the front of the building and gives it more interest, instead of just being a plain flat box without any type of depth, so to speak, in the building. And after we came up with that entryway canopy, we said, well, why don't we celebrate that with a dormer that is replicated in that, so it looks like there are characteristics carried out throughout the building, and not just some random thing slapped onto the front of that building that just didn't seem right. So that was the thought process in creating that dormer, and trying to replicate the eyebrow down below, as well as with the eyebrow up on the roof, and trying to tie it all together.
Yeah. Do you think it would be possible to execute them with like a gabled format rather than that curved one you've got now?
I think that if we put a gable over 3 windows there, it would be a pretty large gable, and I think it would overpower that roof, and that's why we kind of went with the
I
eyebrow
see.
as well. So we were trying to keep it as minimal as possible, but at the
Right.
same time achieve the goal of trying to bring natural light into the attic space.
Yeah.
I do believe though, if we did put a gable over that dormer at that size, it would be a lot more obtrusive and noticeable,
Mm.
and it would not fit in. With all due respect.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this reminds me of another question I had. I forgot to ask about in the rear of
Mhm.
that. Let's call it well, shall we refer to it as the attic for now, since that's what it is now. You said it's 2 apartments, and that's why there's 2 doors for getting out to the back decks there. So this looks like it's pretty much in the middle.
Mhm.
So how, I don't know what the interior layout's going to be, but wouldn't that be like right,
Right in the middle.
yeah.
Yeah. So on this attic space, one unit has more space in the front, the other one has more space in the back in the
Hmm.
attic space. So that's why this is going to be on the front. On one of the units, this will be more of like a study or an office space up there on the front of the building, and the back side there really is, it's just a kind of a loft space that allows you to have access to the roof. There isn't really that much space for living space up on there, but it's just access to get up to the roof to be able to have those views out to the water.
Right. And all right. So, and these are part of the units directly below. It's like a stair or something.
Correct. So
Okay.
basically what we're creating, or what my client is trying to create, is almost like a 2-story apartment building
Yeah.
for the top units and for the bottom units.
Yeah. Okay. I was gonna ask you. Okay, and just a thought. I know from my own, I live in the neighborhood, and I know that facade faces most largely south. So I think you would get surprising amount of light where that you're not abutting any building right in front of you there. You've got the street, and then yeah, park lunch. So you've got a pretty good shot. It's quite a bit of sun coming in there. So anyway, I know how.
Which is, and at the same time, that's one of the reasons why you want to put a canopy over the front door,
Yeah.
because it does get a little bit abused by the sun.
Mm.
So we were hoping that a canopy would help relieve that aspect of it.
Yeah. Well, then last question, and I'll because I don't want to prolong this unduly. You said that you worked on a lot of historic structures. It sounds like, so you must have some experience with this. Would you How would you defend the use of those curved, they do seem I agree with Joe that it's unusual to see that on a period, a house or a structure from this period. How would you defend that choice?
Well, yes, I definitely understand and appreciate, and you are correct. The eyebrows is definitely something that wasn't in the 18th century or 17th century. It did come along later. Um, I guess, in my opinion, we're trying to make this look much better than what it is now. There is no way that you can go back and make this exactly the same as it was a long time ago. Just a different materials, a different style, the different way things are constructed today. There's no way to really replicate it perfectly, and so we're trying to find the new construction methods and details that we utilize today, and bring back some of the historic details. The eyebrow that I've seen them all around Newburyport, and many different buildings that are not, they're not period correct for the houses that they are on, so to speak. But when all said and done, I've had many clients or people walking by saying, wow, that really looks nice. And it really enhances and gives it a little bit more of a eye-catching appeal to the building, which is typically just a square box.
Yeah.
So trying to keep it depth and so forth. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. We probably won't be able to replicate, some of the brackets that they have, the ornate brackets that you find in some of the federal homes that are underneath covered porches. A lot of those you can't replicate without significant expense to be able to do those. And so we're trying to find a happy middle ground that we can create some type of archaic element and put it back into the building. So that's what we're thinking.
Yeah, and I don't. At the same time, as I commented earlier, when you're rehabbing a historic structure or adding, putting some alteration or addition on that's contemporary, it's supposed to be differentiated from the old from new and so forth. So there's that argument that that would help it sort of read as, oh, this is something they updated along with several other things, obviously, all that stuff in the back, although I don't think many people are going to detour around the back just to look at the back. Would the owner consider 6/6 pattern windows in the front? Would that be a huge expense?
No,
change?
I don't think, I can talk to him and confirm. I don't want to just assume, but I don't think he would complete if that's what one of the factors that would definitely get us approved and be able to move forward. I don't think he'd be opposed to that. He would. I know that he would like to, on the sides and on the back, he would like to keep it that way just for the views out to the water, especially on the back.
Right.
So there's less obstruction. But the front, if that wanted to be 6/6, and I'm assuming, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I would think that he'd be
of course.
with that.
Yeah, that would be up to them. All right. Well, all right. That's all I've got to say at this point. So what we've got to do next is we do need to vote on whether it's preferably preserved. That's the motion we need to hear at this point. And so just to be clear, as long as I'm talking, I'll propose a motion that we find the structure to be historically significant and preferably preserved. A yes vote would mean that the 1-year demo delay is imposed, and we can talk about lifting that afterwards. A no vote would mean that it's not preferably preserved, and that they, as I understand it, that since it's a one or the other, it's either preferably preserved or not. So if the motion fails, then they can go ahead and proceed with the plans without further ado. So I hope that was clear. So,
Chair, I will move that 182 Merrimack is preferably preserved.
Okay, so there is a motion that it's historically significant, which we already decided anyway, and preferably preserved. Is there a second?
I
Second.
Andrew.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Okay, let's see how the votes go. Mr. Bernhardt, your vote on that.
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Biff Baus.
Yes.
Okay, I still have Mark on my list here, but he did not show up. Mr. Morgan.
Yes.
Okay, and the chair is a yes. Okay, so it is preferably preserved, so that automatically imposes the 1-year demo delay. So we can talk. We've already talked. Let me just make a notation here. Just give me 1 second and keep everything straight. So we can talk briefly about about the plans. It sounded like looking at my colleagues here, some were okay. I do see your hand, Joe. So did you want to say something, Joe?
Well, I just wanted to reiterate. I mean, I did want to respond to the applicant's Chris's comments about the creative impulse here, and I totally appreciate that. I understand that he's trying to produce a design that preserves and also adds a little bit of interest and flair. I think that's we're on shaky ground there. We really, as part of as a commission that's focused on preservation, we have to recognize that there are some elements that can be added that, even though they might seem modern, are actually, they do hearken to other periods, and that the preservation is trying to maintain the existing historical characteristic features of the building. If new ones are added that have significance, they should have significance in, yes, they should have significance in a way that distinguishes themselves from the original structures, but should not hearken to other historical periods. I think that muddies the canvas here. What we really want to do is, if you want to add pieces that are contemporary, then let them be contemporary. Let them be interpretations, creative interpretations that don't actually rely on other periods that confuse the context. So that's my comment. That's my only comment.
Yeah, and in fact, just a quick comment from me, and I'll get to Biff. I see your hand as well. We ran into that very argument at our last meeting, where there was an example shown of some where it was suggested that brackets that were very clearly Victorian/Italian, they would be put on a federal structure, and it just was kind of jarring. Biff, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I think I'm going along with what Joe was saying, but I think when I first brought up that, what bothered me was the curve of it, the eyebrow, and not being federal. I feel there's, like, right now, I think there's a real propensity to like very high style architecture. The Queen Anne style is very popular again, and whereas federal style, a lot of people see it as it's a box, but that is essentially what makes federal style architecture what it is. It's mathematical. It's it's geometrical. It's all those things, and it's not organic or round. I mean, the eyebrow thing it was meant to mimic like thatched roofs. It's just, I think that's what really threw me off. I mean, that back dormer, even though it does go up to the top, at least it's flat, and it has more of the feeling of what a federal building might have on it. But I think that's what I think that's the thing that bothers me most about it. It's just that the federal thing is about being boxy, and I think to make it better, you could play that up even more, and maybe not use those curves. The 1969, I think, photos of the building, it had actually asphalt or asbestos siding, I think, at that point. But they had there was a covered small portico over the front door. It's more flat style. That might be something to reference, to look at. It's in the it's not in our local Form B, but it was if you look on the Macris forms, you can find it there. That I think just is what I wanted to say about that. Just that the federal is the box part is, and the simplicity is what was deemed beautiful. And just because right now in our contemporary feel of what a style is, I think it's important that we remember that that's what this style is about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and and to just add one quick, I don't disagree with anything you just said, Biff. Only I'll just add that federal period certainly could include ornamentation, but it was it tended to be kind of harken back to classical themes and motifs and designs that good, a lot of, and there are a lot of good examples both here in Newburyport and places like Salem. There's lots of good examples there, and so on, where you can get fancy but in a certain way. Anyway, um, so Chris, where we are is it's I'm not doesn't I'm just I haven't done a straw poll, but I don't think we could vote on a motion to accept the plans as presented and lift demo delay. And if that fails, it's not, what it would mean is that you could come back with some proposed changes. Looks like I've just noticed the hand of Anthony Bonacorso and also Zach Longley. So I will allow them to comment on this at this point. Why don't we start with Mr. Bonacorso?
Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for the opportunity to present, and I also appreciate the education that I'm getting with the detail from multiple periods and how everything interrelates with one another. I'm getting feedback. I don't know if that's me or someone else. As Chris had mentioned, we were looking at the roof issue from multiple different angles and what could fit, whether we were going to do some kind of a gable dormer. And some of those ideas just didn't scale properly to the roof line. It really didn't work the way that the spacing would be over the living space inside, because the inside, the attic area, like Chris had mentioned, does have a loft component to it. So in a sense, it's kind of a two-story feel when you're in the upper units. So we were trying to compromise and come up with something that we thought could meet the objective of quality living space with natural sunlight and all that. So again, we were looking, and I understand with the having a curved roof or an eyebrow roof, so to speak, and this depiction of what we see here may not be the final version of what I would like to present or actually physically build, but it just, I thought it was a great way to start the conversation. Is this may be a good beginning point, because again, a double gable dormer, I should say, up there, it wouldn't fit and it wouldn't work properly. We didn't think it would scale, so we were trying to come up with something else. My first option, or my first consideration, was a skylight, but I honestly think that you would never even consider that in the front. So we would say maybe we can do something that's a little bit more appealing, and that's one of the reasons why we chose this type of a design. As far as the front entry, again, it provides all the benefits that we want. We want to have some curb appeal, something that you could a little protection and coverage from rain, sun, and whatnot. But again, from this angle that we're looking at, it would appear that you're 50 yards away from the home, because we don't have that kind of distance in the street. So I really don't think you'd see much of it at all. You would see the transformer on the telephone pole above, but that's another issue. But unfortunately, that's the world we live in. But I'm taking notes here and all the concerns and things that we would like. But what I would like to say is, being a resident of the town, one of the things that I admire most is how we're trying to maintain its original historical qualities to the town. My wife and I just absolutely love it here, and we have other friends that want to move up. And I have a daughter that's in architectural design, so she's always intrigued to hear what we're proposing, or what we're trying to build. This is something that I want to keep and hold and have ownership for a long time. I'm not looking to, as Chris mentioned, build and flip. That's not my intention here. It's to preserve it as best I can. As far as what's there, I did not explore underneath the vinyl, other than in the rear of the building, what is there. I would prefer to be able to restore what's there as much as I can. So if we did strip the vinyl and find that the cedar siding is actually is salvageable, then we'll use every means to do exactly that. As you know, and what everyone has said, we had talked about having PVC trim. I mean, AZAC is just a manufacturer's name, but whether it's AZAC or Clear, there's several other manufacturers. I don't know if I don't want to be held to just a particular name or brand name. Right. It more the idea of it's a composite material that's just going to low maintenance. It's not going to rot. We're not going to have an issue. Right. But if I can preserve the siding that's there, we will. If it's just rotted and not to mention the thicknesses of the cedar that's there, I don't even know if we can even find it or mill it, because what was built and the siding back in the day, you probably know a lot more than I would. The thickness is very different than what is standard today. So that all that stuff would probably be a special order. And as you know, in this environment right now, getting any special order product is extremely difficult. But so I believe it was Joe's point about trying to preserve that. That is my original intention, is trying to do that. The other comment about the corner boards, I know it has a little bit of a raised panel details. Part of that is also because of the materials. When we do try to blend the materials, there could be seams. And often when you put the panels over where the seams, but it kind of hides that. The having seams. So we could take a look at scaling it back, but just a flat corner board, I just thought may have been a little, just a little, plain. But again, if you find that that is the preferred look, I'm not opposed to it. I just wanted to add just a little bit of character, but I don't want to deviate too much from its original glory. There was another comment that was made about 6/6, but Chris had mentioned that we were looking at different window manufacturers. Again, whether it's going to be Marvin or Harvey or equivalent, it's just right now trying to find manufacturers that we can get things delivered in a reasonable amount of time is another challenge. So we would go with what is first and foremost, it's quality. Secondly, it's trying to get something that is available. But my question would be, if we did 6/6 and it's black framing with black grills, would that have a different look in terms of, would it look more, not to use the term like bars on a window, or would it have the same feel? And I guess that's an architectural question that what do you think would look better if it was all black bar? It may appear, it may be a little scary. So that's why we were looking to let in natural light. So I have it in my home where I have cottage style windows with the upper sash it has grills and the lower doesn't. And it's nice with sunlight. It's just, again, it's not from that period, but I want to maintain that same look from the past, but also if there's a little opportunity to add some flair, I'd like that chance to do that.
Well, I'll see if anyone else agrees with me, but I know that the black window muntins, historically, having the sash painted black and the muntins was done, but not the frame. When you're doing a replacement window and you have the whole thing and it's all clad and it's all black, I know that's come to be a very popular style. They're popping up all over the place, and there's no restriction. You don't need a permit to do that. People are just doing it, and I think the consensus from all the preservation-minded people that I've spoken to is that it's not a good idea. It's not an appropriate thing to do. And with replacing windows like this, where they come as a unit, you're not going to want to be painting just the sash or anything. So they more appropriately would be white, which would match the trim. So that's my only comment on that. All right, well, but I appreciate your comments, Mr. Bonacorso. If you don't forget, you can lower your hand in the Zoom thing, and I'll. It looks like Mr. Longley wanted to make a comment as well.
Yes, I'm the owner of the professional building on Forester Street.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure. Well, number one, I was not able to log on earlier, and I don't know if that issue has been discussed tonight or not.
Oh, not yet.
Not yet. Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah,
all right.
so
right
you
on
haven't
time
missed it, Mr. Longley, or if I can call you exactly. I don't know if you remember me, but you worked with my in-laws on a financial matter some years back.
Did they work out well?
It was okay. Yes, it was fine. No prejudice either way. So don't worry about that.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds
All right.
good. All right.
Okay.
So I'm not late. That's
Nope,
good.
you're not late. You can put your hand down and we'll get to you. In fact, it's well, there is one other thing on the agenda before we get to the Forester Street, but won't be long.
Great. Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you again, Mr. Monacorso. Well, we should probably just get ahead and take a vote. And I don't think we need to drag the discussion out even further. If the vote would be on a motion whether or not, well, to accept the plans would be the motion, and then a yes vote would accept the plans and lift the demo delay. A negative or no vote would be to not accept the plans, and the demo delay would be in effect. And the owner, the architect, could continue to work with the planning office on, that we've given them quite a bit of feedback, and they might, want to come back with ideas. And typically there's back and forth kind of, it doesn't necessarily have to wait till the next meeting, but through the planning office, there can be some back and forth to come up with modified plans.
So they can't hear us.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Now you're muted, Zach. Okay. So,
Chairperson, can I ask a quick question?
yes, who is speaking?
This is Chris.
Oh, hi, Chris. Yes, you sound a little different, but go ahead, yes.
All right. Is it possible that we can it seems like there doesn't seem to be much objection to the back. And there is some, the owner is looking to address the back before the dormer and so forth before the snow flies, or something to that effect. Is it possible that we can get approval for the back, and then we can say, okay, we'll come back and talk to you and resolve the front through communications through the planning board or through the meetings itself? Is that a possibility, or does it have to be all accepted at once?
Well, in my opinion, yeah, the practical side of me says that makes a certain amount of sense, because all the controversy does seem to be in the front. Let me think if we can word that in a motion that is clear to all parties, and clear and enforceable and all of that. Because typically, it's kind of a accept plans with conditions. So that I know that can be done. So what we can do is word it so that that we'll accept the plans as presented on the condition that, and the condition would be that as it applies to the well, we'd have to be specific, the rear, and there's also work on the sides with replacement windows. If we want to restrict it to simply the rear facade, would that be all you need for the time being to at least, keep work going?
Yeah, I think well, I should say the one other piece that we would like to try and do soon would be to order the windows, because the windows are anywhere from a 12 to 14 week lead time.
Okay.
But in specific, it sounds to me, from a general idea, the questions and comments that have been going on, that the main objections are with the front entryway and the front dormer.
Yeah.
Everything else, I think everybody was relatively okay. And if I had to hedge my bets, we'd be able to, if it weren't for the front entryway and the front dormer, we'd be able to pass this tonight. But I'm not going to assume. So I'm wondering if we might be able to, if there's a way that we might be able to improve the back and the windows, and then we can, we would be happy to reassess the design and of the front dormer and the front entryway.
Yep. Okay, and well, as far as the windows, we've run into problems in the past in approving things that were not as specific as they should have been in retrospect. For example, on the windows where they, we've had, people, typically people will specify the brand, the model. Some people have even brought in samples, and we used to have real in-person meetings and so on. So so that way everyone knows exactly what's going on. Now, if it has to change, let's say you propose, like in your documentation, you talk about Pella windows, it's their Pella Lifestyle series and so on. if it turns out, you call them tomorrow and it's going to be, a 2-year lead time or some crazy thing,
Mhm.
and you have another brand that is essentially similar, that's a minor modification that we can work with myself in the planning office to give the okay or not to go ahead and do that as a minor change.
Uh-huh.
So, but we would like, I like these things. Well, it's not what I like personally, but it works out best for all parties concerned if everyone understands clearly what is expected. So that Mr. Bonacorso knows what he, can and cannot do. He knows clearly what the guidelines are, so he's comfortable and doesn't have to, be looking over his shoulder. And the same thing with us. We know what to expect from what you guys are going to do.
Uh-huh.
See what I'm saying? So, I
May I
think what we
make a
could.
motion, Chair? This
Yeah.
is Joe Morgan. May I move that 182 Merrimack be approved as submitted?
You can, we can vote on that.
Exactly.
Okay. Does someone second that motion? No one wants to second that?
I'm making that motion in the affirmative, as is our custom.
Yep, I understand. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll second it because I think it's appropriate that we vote on it. I don't think that's necessarily out of order. So everyone's clear on the commission, a yes vote would approve these plans in their entirety. A no vote would leave the demo delay in place, and we would continue to work with the architect and possibly maybe even make a little bit more progress tonight. As I don't want to spend too much more time on it, but maybe we can get some preliminary approval for just the back tonight, but we'll see. But for now, let's just vote on this one, which would approve the plans as submitted tonight. So start with Andrew.
No,
Okay, Beth.
No.
Hang on a second. Okay, Joe.
No.
Okay. Okay, so, and the chair is also a negative, but even one negative vote would be enough to sink it because you need 4 affirmative votes. Do we want to just come back, revisit this in a couple of weeks, or does I think that I think it would be legal to say something like that to approve the work presented only for the rear elevation, which would include the work on the back decks, the railings, and all of the deck related work, and the dormer in the rear. Would if someone feels, would you guys want to take a vote on that? Just the rear facade work?
I would make the motion to take the vote on the rear facade work.
Okay, so just so we're clear, the motion would be approve planned work as proposed for the rear. That's this facade only. That's the side facing the park that was discussed. Okay, so we're all clear. Is there a second on that?
Chair Richards.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm just trying to understand how this would be process-wise. If we thinking that there would need to be a second, I mean, I just am quite curious about the process going forward to get the rest of the project approved. This doesn't feel very neat, and I'm just wanting to remind.
Yeah, I have reservations myself. I think
the next meeting is 12/8, and it would be unusual to approve a project in this way.
Yeah, I think that's not, I think procedurally that's extremely, I mean,
risky.
It's risky. We haven't done it before, and I would not support it. So
Yeah.
you're not going to have a forum on that.
All right. All right. Okay. I'm my gut tells me that the Caitlin's and Joe's comments are correct, that it's what the correct way to do it would be to have what they could do is have actually the easiest thing would be to come back with a proposal if you if you're not sure what you want to do in the front, Chris and Anthony, just propose the rear work on December 12th, and the stuff that no one was violently opposed to, or even opposed to, period, and that could be easily approved, and then you could at least get, get going with that. All right, is that understood?
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, I do have a question, gentlemen. I just to be 100% certain. So the major concern, obviously, it appears, is just the roof line in the front. If that was resubmitted as skylights, as you had mentioned earlier, would that be accepted, an acceptable option to the board?
Well, it would be to me personally. Is that Anthony speaking?
Yes.
Okay, because mainly because they would be very low visibility of them. Maybe if you're dining outside of park lunch, you'd see them, but to most passersby and drivers, you wouldn't even see those. So I personally think those would be satisfactory. Other members of the board, would people generally look more favorably on skylights than that eyebrow thing?
We have for other.
Yeah.
We have in the past approved skylights over dormers.
Yeah.
Sooner.
By
right,
over meaning in preference to.
to having a skylight as opposed to a dormer.
Right. That's what I thought you meant. And
Yeah.
Biff and Joe, any comments on that? If they come back with a proposal like that, you think that'd be more favorably reviewed? Your body language, Joe, says maybe, maybe not.
Exactly, right. I certainly, I think it's one of other solutions. Yes, there are other solutions that include other dormer types and styles and designs.
Yeah.
If they wish to explore those, I mean, we're
Yeah.
not here to advise them on that, but
Right.
I would accept a skylight, sure.
Biff, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think I would. I'm not. I don't think I'm a huge fan of them, and I think
Right.
you're right. You don't really see them.
Yeah, I hear what you guys. I feel for you guys, because I feel the same way. It's what one of my favorite expressions. It's suboptimal solution,
Yes.
but right, but but preferable to the alternative. Does that help you, Anthony?
Yes, it does. We'll Chris and I will explore something else that may, and we'll look at some historical photos to find other styles that may or may not work if it's any type of
Okay.
a roof structure. But if at last resort, we'll come back with a skylight option, I suppose.
Okay.
And as far as the front entrance, is the curved roof something that also is you're in favor of, or should we change that design a little bit?
Yeah. Well, if you want my, I would look at historical examples. I think to have a curved section over the door is not unusual, in that they would often have like a fan light or something like that, but they wouldn't have a curved roof. Typically the entryway would have, just a kind of a, typically it would be a rectilinear type of framework around that, with a little, maybe a cornice at the top that was, maybe a foot or so deep, not a whole, so it doesn't give you a whole lot of protection from the elements if you were looking for that. But that was the only other historically appropriate example. Is a little more complicated because it's a little bit of a gabled roof with typically supported in the front with two columns. But that's the most common federal period entryway, to anything beyond simply the more or less fairly flat look.
I have no problem with doing something that's a lot more traditional. We can work that out, and
Okay.
I guess we'll present again for the front facade. in
Yeah, and
December.
before we leave this entirely, there are people who are really good at, one of the co-presidents of the Newburyport Historical Trust, or Historic Trust, is an architect, and I know other members are very familiar with ways of making alterations to period houses that don't that don't kind of, for lack of a better phrase, screw it up. And you're free to, in the past, they've been very helpful with applicants before this commission to help them come up with a plan that works well.
we'll do that. I appreciate the recommendation.
Yeah.
Thank you for.
Sure. My pleasure.
Last question for you, Chairperson. If we were able to make these modifications quicker and be able to work through the planning department, is this something that we have to come back and get formally approved, or is this something that we can work through the planning department to get?
No, it'd have to. My understanding, and I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, is that the commission would have to look at the changes and have there would be a vote of the commission to approve them, which would lift the demo delay.
On a formal meeting. Okay.
Yeah.
Understood. I just want to make sure. That's
Yep.
all.
Yep. No problem.
Okay.
Okay. Well, it took a little longer than I had hoped, but it was a helpful discussion. So it is what it is. So we'll move right along. Thank you, Mr. Bonacorso. Thank you, Mr. Crump. Sorry.
Yep.
And we'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all your time and all the energy that you guys put on this. And we look forward to meeting with you again soon.
Okay.
And have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Bonacorso.
Take care.
Okay. All right. Let's move along, nip along smartly here, because I know well, we have Mr. Longley here, who's been waiting patiently. That's the comments on the 37.5 Forester Street, and there's the historical. Well, I think with the historical advisory report we can handle quickly. Did you all have a chance to look at that? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes.
It turns out that I realized I forgot one little thing that I should have added. I was back when I reviewed my notes. So I have that. Let me open that particular window. I was going to suggest that I would add a one simple phrase to the very last sentence. Yeah, you can go to page 2 there. Okay, so you see the last sentence says basically would not have a significant adverse impact, blah, blah, blah. Well, instead of the period, right after the word structure there at the very last word, I would say, and I'll start from character and value of the structure, if executed without damage to the historical framing and structure, which might make future removal impossible. I should have put that in the original one, but I forgot. So I would like to add that. So if we're going to vote to approve it, I would ask that we approve it with that slight amendment.
I'll make that movement.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve the draft with the change that just read by the chair.
Seconded.
And thank you. And Gretchen, I can send that to you if you want to include this exact wording in the notes. Okay, very good. So voting on that, Mr. Bernhardt.
Yes.
Okay, hang on a second. I gotta do something real quick here so I can record your vote. Okay, I'm sorry, that was yes, right?
Yes.
Mr. Baus.
Yes.
Thank you. Joe Morgan.
Yes.
Thank you for your support, my fellow commissioners. And so I will, Caitlin, I can probably send you that either later tonight or tomorrow, the version that doesn't say draft and has that slight change, and we'll be done with that one. Okay, we can move to 37.5 Forester Street by way of, hang on a second, okay, I see where we are here.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Who's speaking?
This is Jake Shoppy representing T-Mobile. This is in regards to the T-Mobile modification to 37.5 Forester Street. Okay,
let me just say one quick thing, Jake, before I turn, you speak, and that's just to set the board. So a lot of the board members knew it. I don't think a lot of them have done a Section 106 review. So just so you all know, this board does not approve or disapprove these particular requests. Section 106 review is a legally required review from the local historical commission on whether the proposed, whatever the work is going to have an adverse impact on the historical values of whatever structure we're talking about here. There was a little bit of a complication in that there is a preservation restriction that we are not the grantee on that. Somebody else is. I don't know if they've weighed in on it, but I know that this is what appears to be a relatively minor change to what's already on the building. So I'll let Mr. Shappy describe what exactly it is they plan to do, and we can take it from there.
Chair,
Yep.
just for information, clarification,
Sure.
what is the commission's role in the decision process? What are we listening for, and what are we thinking about, and what are we deciding?
Okay. What the end product that we need to come up with, Joe, is a determination as to whether or not we feel there's an adverse impact of the work that's proposed to be done. That doesn't necessarily disprove it, disallow it, but I believe that would go to the planning board, or I think they're the authority on this as far as having approval. I know they approved the original work back in the day, and I don't know. I'm anxious to hear from Mr. Shappy as to whether the holder of the preservation restriction has anything to say about it, but I have a feeling, well, I'm anxious to hear what he has to say, that is Mr. Shappy, because it might turn out that the changes or the proposal may be of have such a negligible impact on what's existing that it's kind of a moot point. But did I answer your question, Joe?
Yes, I think so. I think we just have to listen.
Yeah. So Mr. Shappy, or Jake, why don't you tell us exactly what is planned? For the sake of time, I'll say that I know I took a look at the plans. I know Caitlin Sullivan, our planner, has as well. With both of us, our main question, we really have just two main questions. One is, did you ever hear from the holder of the PR if they have anything to say about it? And the other one is, it sounds like you're going to, whatever work you're doing, it's like basically swapping out antennas and some related radio equipment within existing enclosures without changing those physical enclosures. But we're not totally clear on that. So if you can clarify those 2 points, we'd really appreciate it. So you have the floor.
I'd be happy to. We are just going within the existing stealth enclosures.
I see.
The
Okay.
panels will be removed from the outside while we replace the unit inside, and then that will be resecured, and it will have the exact same exterior presentation.
Okay.
Regarding the trust, if there is no exterior difference,
Right.
The owner of the building, Zachary Longley, has assured us that is the only thing they have condition over. This does not change the exterior of the trust of the building, so the trust would not have any authority that SAR Limited Partnership does not. There is no exterior modification at all. Nothing's visible from the streets. It's within the existing enclosures.
Okay. Well, that makes things easy, doesn't it?
I hope so.
Yeah. So Caitlin is showing this elevation here. The kind of gray area. Jake, correct me if I'm wrong. It looks like, am I correct that those gray rectangles represent what you referred to as the stealth enclosures?
That's correct. Those are existing stealth enclosures.
Right. They are there today, and they are not changing in shape, size, or size. Well, just shape or size. Correct?
No, not shape, size, or form.
Okay. So essentially, when your work is complete, the changes that are visible to the outside world will be virtually nil.
You'll never know.
Okay. Well, that makes it easy, because if there are literally no exterior changes, I have my views on what's existing, but what exists is what exists, and we're not going to go back and change any of that. But if there's literally no change in appearance, I don't think I can't see any grounds for us to say that there's an adverse impact, because there is no impact. Would you agree?
I agree.
Okay. So board, I hope that was clear. more typically, this might, we had a case a couple years back on the Sullivan Building. They were installing, in that case, they were installing some new cellular equipment, and it involved things that would, you know, appear on the roof that weren't there before. It actually did get approved because they were very minimal, and it was not very visible, et cetera, et cetera. So in this case, I don't see any grounds to say there's any adverse impact beyond what's already there, because there isn't any change. Does anyone agree or disagree?
I have a procedural question.
Sure. Yeah.
Maybe it's more for Caitlin. I just don't understand how this is before the historical commission. Why is this here? This doesn't,
Yep.
This is not a demo delay, nor
Yep.
is it a demolition control overlay issue.
That's correct.
So why are we looking
Why are we here?
Yeah.
Well, I'll mention something real quickly and then throw it back to the applicant team. But initially, they had sent you all an invitation to comment back in July. And at that point, there were changes. The enclosures were much bigger, and now we're back to just the existing. And so I think that was the trigger. And now we're here. Unless, Zach Longley, do you have something to add?
I think, well, yeah, I was just going to say, Caitlin, it's my understanding that whenever some, work is done, I don't know what the trigger is on certain projects. I thought it had to do with either federal funds involved, or perhaps federal approval, like from the FCC or something like that.
Exactly.
That when it's being done in a way that is affecting or might affect a historic structure, that this so-called Section 106 review is required.
If
Yeah.
you don't mind me explaining briefly.
Go ahead.
The original design was to expand the stealth enclosures. I believe that's what triggered this review. T-Mobile internally decided, after approvals from the town, from Zach Longley, to reduce the scope specifically for historic impact and to retain the current view. So they scaled back, and this is the design that is moving forward.
Okay. Does that help, Joe? So we don't even need to, yeah, we don't
I mean,
even,
I don't have any comment either way, so that's fine.
Yeah. And hang on a second, I'm just making a note here. So we don't even need a motion or vote. I think that it's clear that there isn't any adverse impact, because nothing is significant, there isn't anything that's really changing. Okay, so sorry that sorry. Okay. Well, appreciate your having to, wait almost about an hour and a half to get to this thing, which was kind of a non-event. But Mr. Shappy, Mr. Longley, thank you for coming in tonight. Okay. Well, so you guys, as far as the Historical Commission is concerned, you guys are all set, and then we'll, and it'll be noted that we don't find any adverse impact of what you plan to do, for the obvious reasons.
Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day and a wonderful holiday weekend.
Oh, thanks very much. I keep forgetting that Thanksgiving is going to intervene between now and our next meeting. But actually, in theory, our next meeting would be on Thanksgiving Day, but we will not be doing that. Thank you very much. Okay. Is there anything else on the agenda, Caitlin? Back. See, so we did yes, we have, and they're in my notes here. We have approval. We need to approve the minutes from the 27th of October. I think the people that are on board today were here then. I think yeah, everyone who's here tonight was here 2 weeks ago, correct? I think we have the same crew. So is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
That sounded like Mr. Biff, so thank you. Is there a second?
Andrew? Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Your vote, Andrew?
Yes.
Okay, your vote, Biff?
Yes.
And Joe Morgan?
Yes.
And the chair is yes. I found the minutes to be just peachy. And the only other thing we have, I don't have any updates tonight, so we can move directly to, is Andy even with us tonight, Caitlin? I don't think so, is he?
No, he's not.
Okay, so there will be no updates from the chair or the planning director. So we can move to number 4, a motion to adjourn unless someone has anything they'd like to say or add.
Actually, a quick question, since we
Yes.
won't have that Thursday,
Yes.
when are we doing another day or?
No, we're going directly to December 8th, I believe. Is that correct, Caitlin?
Yes, that's correct. December 8th.
Yeah.
And then the next meeting is December 22nd, and depending on applications that may end up being canceled.
Yep.
But
Yes.
next meeting is December 8th.
Okay. And then, yeah, December 22nd, we'll see what's on the agenda. We'll try to, for the sake of the upcoming holidays, we'll try to, maybe we can find a way around that meeting. We try not to move the dates of the meeting. It actually wouldn't be quite so hard with Zoom, but you'd be surprised how many conflicts and how difficult it is to move these meetings once you get in a certain rhythm, because, you know, between Caitlin and Andy and everyone else, there's all these other meetings going on, but in and around the city. So it gets challenging. Yeah. Is there a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, Andrew, I think that was you. Is there a seconded?
This is Joe. I second.
Okay, Mr. Morgan. So let's see how you all vote on that. I know you desperately want to stay here all night, but let's see what happens. Andrew, your vote?
Yes.
Okay. Why am I not shocked? Okay, Biff.
Yes.
Okay, Joe.
Yes.
Oh, gee, if I don't vote yes, we're not adjourned. It takes 4 to pass, but I'll spare you the agony. I'm in favor. We will adjourn the meeting. Thanks so much. Thanks for all your comments, by the way. You know, you guys are really appreciate, you know, you doing the research, your thoughtful comments. It really, I think it's very helpful to the attendees to get that feedback. I hope that we can, or they can come up with a plan that is an improvement, especially for that Merrimack Street facade. So we'll see how it goes. So good night, everybody, and thanks for your attendance.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Yes.
same to all of you.
That's true. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.